मनश्चक्षुश्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्म उपनिषदम् माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्याम् मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्त्वनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरते य उपनिषत्सु धर्मास्ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः ॐ इत्येतदक्षरमुद्गीतमुपासीत ॐ इति ह्युद्गायते तस्योपव्याख्यानम् इतरव्यपदेशात् हिताकरणादिदोषप्रसक्तिः हित अकरणादि dosha prasakti brahmani. In Brahman, this kind of dosha or the defect will happen. Will happen. It does not happen, so you are not right. But from what you say? Itara vyapadeshat. Because it is said that Brahman is identical to Jiva. That means whatever doshas there are in Jiva, they should be in Brahman. And this Jivatma is known to do something which is hurtful to him and fail to do something which is helpful to him. This is what we find in Jiva. And if Brahman is identical to Jiva, then Brahman also will be stuck with the same kind of defects. So anyatha, therefore, this identity cannot be. If this identity is, then Brahman cannot be what you claim. You claim that Brahman is consciousness, omniscient, omnipotent, Jagat Karanam, cause of creation. It cannot be if Brahman is identical to Jiva. Therefore, not Brahman, but Pradhanam or some other must be the cause of the creation. Anyatha punaha chetana karanavadaha akshipyate. Anyatha, in another manner, chetana karanavadaha. The view that Chetana or the consciousness of Brahman is Karanam, is the cause of the creation. And that Brahman is the self of the Jiva. This is the theme, this was the theme of the first chapter, the Samanvaya Adhyaya, and that itself is questioned again. Chetanadi Jagat Kriyayam Ashriyamanayam. If you resort to this view, Chetanadi Jagat Kriyayam, then the Jagat or the universe is created by Brahman, that is consciousness, if the view is resorted to. Hita akaranadayo doshaha prasajyante. Then Brahman will get stuck with this doshas or defect of hita akaranam, not doing what is hitam or beneficial, and ahita karanam, doing something that is hurtful. These doshas will land in Brahman. Kutah? Yasya brahmana sashrutvam na tasya hitadi sambandha. Understand what we are saying is, Brahman, which is the creator, Vedanta says, has no relationship with the hita ahita. And the jiva, who is related to or who is endowed with this dosha, the defects of not doing what is right and doing what is wrong, is not the creator. So the distinction is clear. Then how do you say that Brahman cannot be Jagat Karanam? So kutaha? Though we ask him, how do you say that? Itara Vyapadeshat. Remember what you have said elsewhere also. Itara Vyapadeshat. Itarasya Sharirasya Brahmatmatvam Vyapadishati Shrutihi. Shrutihi, the Chhandogya Upanishad, Vyapadishati mentions Sharirasya Brahmatmatvam. Shariraha, Sharire Bhavaha, the one that obtains in the body, the embodied soul, the embodied jiva. Brahmatmatvam, that Brahma is the Atma of jiva, the identity of jiva, and Brahma is taught by the Shruti. Sa Atma Tattvamasi Shvetaketo. Hey Shvetaketu, that Jagat Karanam, Sat is the Atma, is Satyam. And that is Atma. And that's what you are. You are Jagat Karanam Brahma. This is what Shvetaketu is taught. So Shvetaketu is Jiva, who is Shariraha, who is an embodied soul. He is told, you are that, means you are the Jagat Karanam, you are the cause of creation. Iti Prabodhana. That's what the Shruti teaches. If Itara is interpreted as Sharira or Jiva, if Itara is interpreted as Brahma, then Yadva Itarasya cha Brahmana Shariratmatvam Vyapadishati. Elsewhere, Shruti says that this Jiva, Brahman alone is a Jivatma. Because Tasruštva Tadevanupravishada, says Taittiriya Upanishad, having created this body, mind, sense complex, Brahman entered, and therefore one who obtains the Jiva now is none other than Brahman. Iti srashtuhu eva avikrutasya brahmana karyanu praveshena. And remember that while entering, Brahman did not undergo any transformation. Brahman entered as intact as it is, so without any change, meaning Brahman, the full and complete, is the one that entered here, and that's the one with the Jiva. And so, Itarasya Brahmana Jivatmatvam, that Brahman is Jiva. Shariratmatva Pradarsanat. So Shariratmatva Pradarsanat, the true nature of this Jiva or embodied soul is Brahman, because Brahman alone has entered here as Jiva. Iti sastuheva avikrutasya brahmana karyanupraveshena. Okay, and then Brahma kartruko vyapadesha itara vyapadesha iti. Itara vyapadesha. Itaram Brahma. So Brahmana vyapadesha. Brahma is mentioning. Brahma kartruko vyapadesha. Means vyapadesha that is done by Brahma. Brahman itself says this. Iti vyakhyanantaramaha. So that is the another way of explaining itara vyapadeshat. Itarena vyapadeshat. Itarena brahmana vyapadeshat. Brahma itself has said this. Elsewhere Shruti says that Brahman created and entered in Taittiriya. But in Chhandogya, Brahma itself says that I will enter. Therefore, anena jivena atmana anupravishya नाम रूपे व्याकरवाणी इति च परा देवता जीवम आत्मशब्देन व्यपदिशन्ति न ब्रह्मणः भिन्नः शारीरः इति दर्शयति. So there the devata Sat or Brahman itself says anena jivene atmana anupravishya nam rupe vyakarvani. I will enter these three elements as the very Jivatma, and I will bring to manifestation the names and forms. So I will enter as Jiva. That's what Brahman itself says. Iti cha Paradevata, the supreme deity, which is Brahman. Jivam Atma Shabdene Vyapedishanti Jivena Atmana, as Jivatma. So Jiva is the very Atma, very self of mind. Vyapadishanti, mentioning that na brahmana bhinna sharira iti darshayati, that the sharira, the Jivatma, is not different from Brahman. This is what the Shruti says. The meaning is the same, tasruštva and this one. But then, in one case, Shruti says that, in another case, Brahman itself says that I will enter as Jivatma. So, Jiva Brahmanoho Avede Shruti Siddhe Phalitamaha. So, when the identity of Jiva and Brahma is established by the Shruti, then what's the outcome? Tasmat Brahmana Srastutvam Tat Sharyaseva iti. So, since Jiva Brahmana na bhinna sharira, the Jivatma is not different from Brahma. So when the Upanishad says that Brahman is the Jagat Karanam, cause of creation, we should understand that as Jiva is the cause of creation. Jiva has created this because Brahman is Jiva. We said A is equal to B and B is equal to C. So Brahman is Jiva. But Jiva is Brahman and Brahman is creator. So Jiva is creator. Tasmat Brahmana srastutvam tat yad Brahmana srastutvam tat sharirasya iti. Therefore, the creatorship which is stated about Brahma, for Brahman on the part of Brahman, really it belongs to Jiva because Brahman and Jiva are one. So says Nyaya Bhrutyo Rajadina Nyuktah Swayameva Swasya Anartham Kurvan Dushyate. Sometimes you find that one hurts oneself, meaning one does something which is hurtful to one's own self. When it happens? Under duress. Under duress means under pressure. Bhrutyo Rajadina Nyuktah. A servant may be compelled by a master or a king, and under compulsion the servant is found to do something that is hurtful to its own self. So take this ditches for example, that fellow has to do a lot of hard work and that is how he gets tired, and so he does things that are hurtful to himself. So just because Brahman does something hurtful, that is explainable. Under certain conditions, people are found to do something that is hurtful to their own self. And therefore, Brahman also can do something that is hurtful to itself. Why not? So Vashyakara says, Ataha saha swatantrah karta san hitam eva atmanah saumanasya karam kuryat na ahitam janma marana jara rogadi anekartha jalam. Therefore, sa swatantra. Here is not like a bhrutya who is partantra or who is dependent upon somebody or is under pressure. Swatantra. Swatantra karta. Karta is swatantra. All of the karakas are paratantra. Karma, karana, all of them depend upon karta. But swatantra karta, the karaka, the doer is always free, independent. He has a free will. So, here also Brahman or the Jiva is the creator. So it is swatantra. Swatantra karta san. And when one functions independently, without pressure from anybody, outside or inside, then hitam eva atmana kuryat. Then anybody who functions independently will always do something which he likes. So manasya karam. So manasya, pleasing to the mind. So therefore, when a person functions independently, a person will always do something that is pleasing to the mind. So swatantrasya agnyasya sarva svanartha karanam sambhavati brahmanastu sarvajnasya nevamiti. What you say about a servant is okay because he is paratantra. But Brahman is sarvajnam. It is omniscient. And therefore it cannot be that Brahman does something that is hurtful to itself. Hitam eva bhajate atmanah saumanasya karam. When one is left to oneself, then one always does something which is favorable to oneself, pleasing to the mind. Ahitam vishanasti na ahitam. Nobody will deliberately do something to hurt his own self. Janma, marana. What has Brahman created? What has Jiva created for himself? Janma, birth, which is painful. Marana, death, extremely painful. Jara, old age, again painful. Rogadi, anek diseases. Aneka anartha jalam. And thus, aneka anartha jalam. A host of so many calamities have been created by Jivatma for itself. So Jivatma cannot be creator. And Jivatma is the same as Brahman. Therefore Brahman cannot be created. This is the whole point here. You see, Brahman and Jiva are identical. Therefore, what applies to Brahman applies to Jiva. And you say that Brahman is Jagat Karanam, cause of creation. Then Jiva turns out to be cause of creation. And this is what Jiva has done. Created all kinds of calamities or all kinds of suffering for himself. And has not done what should be pleasing to his mind. Says Nyaya, Jivasya upadhi avivekat paramatma abhedam apashyatah yuktam anarthakaritvam. See, Jivasya upadhi avivekat says, who is this Jivatma? One who does not discriminate between the upadhi and the self, aviveka. Jiva is the one who takes the upadhi, the body, mind, sense complex as a self. No viveka, that I am distinct from them, that viveka is not being there. Paramatma abhedam apashyatah. So we are saying that even though Jiva is identical with Brahman, but Jiva does not know that. Because of ignorance, because aviveka does not see that I am Paramatma. Paramatma abhedam apashyatah. So, Jivasya uktam anarthakaritvam. That Jiva, you gave an example that Jiva does this anartha or all this kind of painful thing for itself is understandable because Jiva is ignorant and does not know that it is Paramatma. If Jiva knew that I am Paramatma, that would not be, but he doesn't know that I am Paramatma, that out of ignorance he does it, it's okay. Tasya Paramatmata ananubhavepi Paramatma jivam atma bhinnam anubhavan na badniyat. Says Jiva may not know that I am Paramatma, but Paramatma knows that I know I am the Jiva anyway. Tasya Paramatma ta ananubhavebi Paramatma Jivam Atmabhinam Abhavan Anubhavan. Paramatma knows that Jiva I am in the form Jiva I am. And therefore, Natam Badniyat, Paramatma knowing that I am in the form of Jiva will not bind himself. Suppose Jiva has done it, then of course Jiva has created all kinds of suffering for itself. If the Paramatma has created, then Paramatma Jivatma may not know that Paramatma is my nature, but Paramatma knows that I am in form of Jiva. So why should Paramatma do something that is painful to Jiva when he knows that he himself is Jiva, isn't it? So if you say Paramatma has created this Jagat, then Paramatma being omniscient knows that I am Jiva. And why should Paramatma deliberately create something that is painful to Jiva? Like birth and death and disease and old age and all this. Why should he do that? So Bhashyakara says, Nahi kaschita apartantraha bandhanagaram atmanaha krutva anupravishate. Can anybody? Paramatma is independent. So one who is not dependent, one who is not under pressure, one who is not under apartantra, one who is not under duress, a person like that, bandhana agaram atmanah kurvan, that somebody creates the prison for himself. Bandhana agaram is prison house. Can somebody create prison for himself and then enter? What? Who can do that? Under pressure somebody can do that. So in the prison, you may be subjected to hard labor and they may ask you to create a cell in which you are going to enter. It is possible, under duress. But independently, no Paramatma is independent. He would never create a prison house. This body is a prison house, a source of all kinds of punishment. Why should he create that and enter? मिथ्या ज्ञान मुक्त्वा तात्विकः अनुप्रवेशोपि नास्ति. We say that, wait a minute, when Upanishad says that he entered, don't take it literally. There is no entering, in the primary sense. It's just as though. Says, atatvikopi nasyat. But nobody will do this even for play. So sometimes you are just playing. And so you may not really have created a jailhouse or enter, but you may just play like that. Says in play also nobody would play like this. So Nacha, Bhashyakara says on page 394, Nacha swayam atyanta nirmala san atyanta malinam deham atmatvena upeyad. Nacha swayam atyanta nirmala san. Brahma is atyanta nirmalam, ever absolutely pure. So when you are absolutely pure, can you create for yourself a residence that is extremely impure? Atyanta malinam deham atmatvena upeyat. The Paramatma has accepted this deha as his own self, that's why it's called Jiva. But how can you deliberately do that? How can you enter? Even out of play. Even if you want to play, you cannot enter this absolutely impure body consisting of filth when Paramatma is absolutely pure. And therefore, Tattvika Pravesha, the entry in the real sense is not there, in the unreal sense also it cannot be there. लीलया परस्य आत्मनः jagat kartrutvam. Says, no, no, Paramatma has created the Jagat out of his Leela as a sport. This creation is not a real thing. He is not really creating something real. He is not creating something real. Out of sport he does. And so, Lokavattu, Leela Kaivalyam, there is no rule about what you do out of sport. When you play golf, why are there 18 holes? Why not 17? Why not 21? Why not 12? That's all. That's how it is. Why should be 11 fellows in cricket? Why not 12? Why not 7? Lokavat, just as in the world, when people are playing, there is no reason why they do that. It is just out of pleasure. Similarly, why should Ishvara create this? There is no reason. He has just done it out of sport. Therefore, we are not obliged to explain anything. When there is Leela or sport, then there is no explanation necessary. So, all right. In the meantime, let us read one sentence from Ratnaprabha. Purva Pakshe Jiva Abhinne Samanvaya Asiddhi. Purva Paksha is what? That Jiva and Brahma are identical. Therefore, Brahma cannot be Jagat Karanam, which is what the Samanvaya Adhyaya says. Siddhante Tat Siddhi. Whereas Siddhanta explains that even though Jiva and Brahman are identical, still this Vyavastha can be explained very well, and therefore there is no contradiction with Samanvaya Adhyaya. Iti. Then say Ratnaprabha, Hita akarana iti atra na vyatyasena ahidakaranam dosho vyakhyatah. Hita akaranam. A can be transposed to ahita karanam, Hita akaranam or ahita karanam. That's why Bhashyakara explained both. Hita akaranam, saumanasya karam. One can only create something which is pleasant to oneself. And ahita karanam, one would not do something which is all painful like the birth and death, etc. So Bhashyakara explained both hita akaranam, ahita karanam. And then also Ratnava said, Adipadoktam Bhrantyadikam Apadayati. Is there Adi there? What is it? Hita akaranadi dosha prasakti. Hita akaranam, etc. Not doing what is beneficial to oneself, etc. What is etc.? So, nacha swayam atyan nirmalasan brahma. And so, there can be bhranti. So, bhrantyadikam apadayati. This shows the bhranti, that one who is pure enters takes as body which is impure as the own self. That is bhranti. How can bhranti be there in Brahman? Going back to Nyaya Nirnaya, smartrutvapi prasajjeta sarvajñatvat. If Brahman is sarvajñam, Jiva also becomes sarvajña, then he will remember. So kartrutvapi, smartrutvapi prasajjeta. You remember that you created, that Jiva does not remember anything. If Jiva and Brahma are identical, if Brahma is created, then Jiva is created. That means Jiva has created the universe. Fellow doesn't remember anything. So that's what says Bhashyakara. Krutamape kathanchita dukkakaram tat ichchaya jahyat sukhakaram cha upadadita. Kathanchit dukkharam krutamapi. Suppose you did something in the past that created pain for you. Suppose you did something wrong. Suppose you did something improper in the past, you will remember it that I have done this. And dukkharam tadichaya jahyat. And then suppose you created a house with all kinds of discomfort. Suppose you did that. And therefore, sometimes you go to a new house, and then because you have lived in the old house for 25 years, go to a new place, it takes some time, to get adjusted. So people keep on colliding against walls, because you are accustomed to move in a certain way, the new house arrangement is different. So people collide against wall, and all these kinds of things happen. So suppose you created a house which is very uncomfortable, cause all kinds of problems. Sometimes, anyway, so dukkha karam. Thus, suppose you have created something which is painful, then you can give it up. Then people leave that. Jahyat. Tadichya jahyat. People voluntarily. So suppose this jiva has created this house in the form of this body. Then he is feel to give it up. Why does he hang on to that? Why does he hang on to what is painful? If he is the creator, he should remember that I have done it. It's a wrong thing to do. Okay, let us give it up. Sukha karam cha upadadita. Give up this body which dukkha karam, cause of all kinds of pain, and accept something which is sukha karam, which is pleasant. Why doesn't he do that? And further says, Smarecha maya idam jagat bimbam vichitram virachitam iti. Smarecha. Now he says, and he would remember, maya idam jagat bimbam vichitram virachitam iti. How created this most amazing universe. You remember, because he's Sarvajna, because one with Brahman, but he does not remember. So we say that there is no rule that you remember everything that you have experienced. Anubhute smruti niyama abhavat. See, that is the rule. The rule is that whenever you remember something, you must have experienced it. So, always smruti or the memory must be preceded by an experience. That's the rule. But there is no rule other way that whatever you experience you should remember. That rule is not there. What you remember, you must have experienced. But there is no rule that just because you experience that you remember. Says, anubhute smruti niyama abhavat. Even if you have created this, there is no rule that you should remember it. Maevam, therefore don't expect that jiva should remember that I have created this whole universe, wonderful universe. Iti asanga spashtatvena smruti yogyam etat. But depends on some experiences that are so vivid that you can't forget them. You can forget many experiences that are passing experiences, but certain things are so clear, so vivid that you always remember. So, sarvo hi, therefore, Bhashyakara says, sarvo hi lokaha spashtam karyam krutva smarati maya idam krutamiti. Sarvo hi loka, everybody. Spashtam karyam krutva. Now, spashtam goes with what? According to Nyaya Nirnaya, he seems to take spashtam with karyam. Spashtam karyam krutva. Having created something which is very vivid, one will not forget. Maya edam krutamiti. So when you were deliberately building a house, you build the house. People sometimes do things with their own hands. They build like log cabins and things like that in a forest. He will know that I have done it. That you will not forget. Similarly, you have created this world. You can't forget that that So you don't remember, you can't forget. You don't remember means you are not created. That's the idea. Or other people take it as सर्वै लोकः कार्यं कृत्वा स्पष्टं स्मरति. Or generally people having done something clearly remember, but Jiva does not remember that I have created this world, so he has not created it. That's the thing. And if Jiva is not created, Jiva is identical to Brahman. Therefore Brahman is not created, so Brahma is not Jagat Karanam. Says Nyayana, Nacha Ishvarasya Astyeva Smartrutvam. But we say that suppose Jiva does not remember, Ishvara remembers anyway. Jiva does not remember, but Ishvara remembers. But if Ishvara remembers, then Jiva being identical with Ishvara, Jiva also should remember. Iti navachyam, don't say that. Jagatah mayamayatvat ukta dosha anavakashat. Hey, you are taking this creation very seriously, we say. Jagat is mayamayam. So, it is like magic, like a magician who throws his magical net and creates. So similarly, Jagat is like that only. And that is not real. Had it been real, then what all you are saying would be applicable. Ukta dosh anavakashat. Therefore the Jagat, which is mayamayam, which is like a magical, creation, these doshas are not there because it's not a real creation. Had it been real, then you can say all these doshas are there. Tat pariharatham adhikaranam anarabhyam. But that dosha is not there. The dosha that you are talking about, hita karanam, not doing something that is beneficial, ahita karanam, doing something that is hurtful, all those things would be applicable had the creation been real. But this maya, that being the case, in maya or in mithya, where are these doshas? Therefore, this discussion itself is all unnecessary. That's what Siddhantin says. So the Purva Pakshi says, Yatha cha iti. Yatha cha mayavi swam prasaritam mayam ichchaya anayasenaiva upasamharati evam sharirope imam srishtim upasamharet. All right. Purva Pakshi says, if you say that this creation is like the creation of a magician, then what do you find in magician? Mayavi swam prasaritam mayam ichchaya anayasena upasamharati. A magician is seen to withdraw his magic at will, anayasena, without effort. So magician is seen to unfold or withdraw his magical creation at his own will as well as without any effort. If you say that this creation is like Maya and Brahman has created, therefore Jiva has created, then Jiva should be able to unfold everything or withdraw everything at will. Says, yeah, he does it sometimes. We create something, we do withdraw. Jiva sharirasyabi kvachit upasamhritratvam drashtam. That Jiva also sometimes does withdraw at will. So we have created something, you can break it. Like the sand house you have created, you sometimes destroy it. So it is seen that Jiva also does it. Or, iti ashankya. So Purva Pakshi says, Swamapi tavat shariram shariraha na shaknoti anayasena upasamhartum. If Jiva has created this like magic, suppose he cannot fold up the whole world, at least his own body he should be able to withdraw. Swapi shariram, his own body. Tavasya sharirah na shaknoti anayasena upasamhartum. Even if his own body also, if he has to withdraw or fold up, it takes a lot of time, effort. He's not able to do it by, anayasana, effortlessly. So when he cannot create his own, cannot withdraw his own body, how can he withdraw this universe? So says Jnanirane, buddhi purvakari hitameva atmana srujate iti nyaya virodhat jiva abhinnat brahmana vishwa sustivadina samanvayasya asiddhiti upasamharate. Buddhi purvakari hitameva atmana srujate. Any intelligent thinking person, buddhi purvakari. Some people just do things without thinking. But buddhi purvakari. Kari, one who does things buddhi purvakam. So one who does things thoughtfully. That person, hitameva atmana srujati. A person who is thoughtful and performs deliberate action is always seen to create what is beneficial to himself. Iti nyaya virodhat. But in this Jagat we find that Brahman, even though it is intelligent, still it has created something which is painful, meaning that Brahman cannot be creator. Jiva abhinnat brahmana vishwa sustivadina. Even if Brahman has created Jagat, that Brahman cannot be Jiva abhinnam, it cannot be identical to Jiva. That Brahman must be different from Jiva. But what you are claiming is that Jiva and Brahman are identical, so that cannot be. So Vishwa Srishtivadina Samanvayasya Asiddhi. See, not only Vedanta says that Brahman is Jagat Karanam, that Brahman is the cause of creation, but Vedanta says that Brahman is Atma. So that Brahman is cause of creation, that we can accept. If Brahman is Jivatma, then Jivatma become cause of creation. That is ridiculous. So, the Purvapakshi says that your claim or your view that Brahman is the creator of the universe becomes ridiculous, because then you say that Brahman and Jiva are one. So then the creatorship of Brahman will then apply to Jiva. So Jiva is the creator. How can Jiva create like this, which is painful to himself, which is not pleasant for himself? So what's the Nyaya? Nyaya, or the rule, is that whenever anybody does something deliberately and intelligently, one will always create something that is beneficial and never something that is painful. But that's what has happened. Therefore Jiva cannot be creator, and so Jiva and Brahman being identical, Brahman cannot be creator. So your Samanvaya, what you have established in the first chapter, is disproven. Iti upasamharati. Evam. Bhashyakara says, Evam hitakriyadi adarsanat anyaya chetanat jagat prakriya iti gamyate. Evam hitakriyadi adarsanat. We find that in this Jagat, at least for the Jiva, he has not done something which is beneficial to himself and done things that are hurtful to himself because of that. Anyaya. And this is not in keeping with the reason. Therefore, Chetana Jagat Prakriya Anyaya iti gamyate. So we have to conclude that the Jagat Prakriya, the creation of Jagat, cannot be from Chetanam, cannot be from Brahman, that is consciousness. because of this kind of defects. Iti. Says Ratnaprabha, जीवेशयोः अभेदात् जीव जगतोः दोषाः ब्रह्मणि स्युः, or जीवगत दोषाः is also another reading. जीवेशयोः अभेदात्, but Jiva and Ishvara are identical. You see, understand that according to Vedanta, the identity is only at the level of consciousness. Identity is not at the level of the body. When it says Tattvamasi, that thou art, that doesn't mean that Ahankara is Brahman. The Shvetaketu who identifies his body, that is not Brahman. But Shvetaketu in reality is none other than consciousness. Chidananda Rupa, if he had the Viveka, Atmanatma Viveka, then Shvetaketu would have known that I am consciousness. As consciousness is identical with Brahman, not as Ahankara, not as Jiva. That's our teaching. How do they interpret? They say that, you say that, Shvetaketu is Brahman, which is what most people interpret, that you are Brahman. Can you create the world? Do you know you are omniscient? And so, that Ahankara is Brahman, that is how the interpretation is. That's not the case though. So Shvetaketu is invited here to see the fact that, hey Shvetaketu, you are not what you take yourself to be. You are not Ahankara. You are not Jivatma. You are pure consciousness. You are unrelated to this body-mind complex. It is only incidental. Like the space is related to this part, that is incidental. But even that relationship also does not create any real limitation to space. If the part space thinks that I am limited to part, it is Bhranti, a delusion, and not a reality. Similarly also if Atma thinks that I am a Jiva, it's not a reality, it's Bhranti. So Shvetaketu is living in Bhranti, living in delusion. To pull him out of that delusion is told that, hey, you are Brahman, you are the Jagat Karanam. And Jagat Karanam also is pure consciousness. Even that causality of the Jagat also is not there in Brahman, in primary sense. Brahman is called Jagat Karanam, the cause of creation, only as though from the standpoint of Jagat, we call Brahman Jagat Karanam. But from the standpoint of Brahman, it is not even Jagat Karanam. So that Brahman which is pure consciousness is you, you are also that pure consciousness at that level. So from the standpoint of Chaitanya or consciousness, there is identity and not as Shvetaketu takes himself to be. But the Purva Pakshi takes that way. And A is equal to B is equal to C. That Brahman, Jiva is Brahman and Brahman is Jagat Karanam. So Jiva is Jagat Karanam. That equation applies and has raised all these kinds of objections. Same thing says Ratnava. Jiveshayoho abhedat. If Jiva and Ishvara are identical, Jiva gata dosha brahmani syuhu. Then all the doshas, like doing something which is hurtful, not doing something that is beneficial, and so on, these kind of doshas, brahmani syuhu, they all will be in Brahman. Brahmagatascha srushti samhara shakti sarvasmartrutvadeyo guna jivesyuhu. And all the gunas and all the doshas in Jiva will come to Brahman, and all the gunas of Brahman will come to Jiva. What is Brahmagatascha srushti samhara? So srushti, creatorship, samhara, destroyership, shakti, being omnipotent, sarvasmartrutvadeya, remembering everything, All these gunas or attributes that Brahman has will all be in Jiva if Jiva and Brahman are identical. So we say, good, that's nice. So, Gujarati mein tamara mama sakar, all right. And so, be my guest. So, that's good. That Jiva will be omniscient and omnipotent. Nacha ishtaha patti, that is not desirable for you. Jivasya swasharirepi samhara samarthya adarsanat. See, this portion should have gone with the previous sutra anyway, but everywhere it is printed like this. So anyway, Jivasya swasharirepi samhara samarthya darshanat. A jiva cannot even easily destroy his own body, let alone destroy the whole world. So many people try to commit suicide and then they don't die. Sometimes they set themselves to fire and then poor fellows get burned and then suffer. So there are many cases where people they swallow some medicines and stuff like that and then still they don't die and then a lot of suffering is there. So it's not easy to put an end to one's own body, let alone putting an end to the whole universe that you have created. Therefore, Sammara Samartha Darshanat iti prapte, this is the Purva Paksha. Siddhanta Sutram Vyachaste, then following is the Siddhanta Sutram, the Sutra of Siddhanta or Vedantin. See the next Sutra. Adhikam tu Bheda Nirdeshad. Says Adhikam tu Bheda Nirdeshat. Adhikam tu, what is Adhikam? Adhikam is more, greater or different. So Anya Devatat Viditat Atho Aviditat Adhi. Adhi means Upari or Adhi means different also. Upari means different. So Adhikam tu Bheda Nirdeshat. So we now point out that just as there are passages, we talk about the identity of Jiva and Brahma, there are passages we say that Brahma is different from Jiva. That also, so take all passages into account. Adhikam tu means Sharirat Bhinnam. Brahman is different from the embodied soul. Sarvajnam, Sarvashakti Brahma, Jagat Srashtu, Brahma. We say, who is the creator of the universe? Sarvajnam, Sarvashakti. The omniscient, omnipotent Brahma is the creator of this universe. That's what we say. Not this Jivatma. We don't say that Jiva has created the Jagat. We say Brahman. What Brahman? Which Brahman? The omniscient, omnipotent, intelligent, that Brahman has created. And from the standpoint of that Brahman, na hita karanadi dosha prasakti. And Brahman has not done anything for itself which can bring about pain to itself. Because Brahman is unkanaya loka dukhyena bahya. Brahman transcends everything, therefore nothing happens to it. Therefore, hita karana, ahita karanam, that dosha will not apply to Brahman. But kutaha jiva Brahma, how do you say that Brahman and Jiva are different? Brahman is different from Jiva, how do you say that? Veda Nirdeshat, because it is also mentioned separately. Atmavare, Drashtavya, Shrotavya, Mantavya, Nidhyasatavya, Maitretri, Kalpita Vedasya Vyapadeshat. See, Maitreya is told, hey Maitreya, Atma must be realized, Atma must be listened to, reflected upon, deeply meditated upon. That Atma is also different from, so what Atma is used for Brahman, so it's different from Maitreya. That's how iti kalpita vedasya vyapadeshat. Maitreya is told to listen to Atma, reflect upon Atma, meditate upon Atma, that Atma is as though different from Maitreya or Jivatma. That is how Bheda Vyapadeshat, that even though Kalpita Bheda, even though it is the seeming duality, as long as there is ignorance, that is as though the duality between Jiva and Brahman, but not in reality. But that the seeming duality is there, and that is what is taught there. Kalpa Vedasya Vyapadeshat Nitya Muktasya cha Brahmana Hitahita Abhavat. And for Brahman with Nitya Muktam, ever free, that cannot be beneficial or hurtful. It is devoid of all that, transcends those ideas. So, Siddhanta Sutram Vyachaste, Bhashyakara explain the Siddhanta Sutram. Tu shabdah paksham vyavartayate. Sutra is not read. Tu shabdah adhikam tu. What is tu? Paksha means Purva Paksham. Purva Paksham Vyavartayati. It refutes the Purva Paksha. The two, understand, however, Adhikam, however, understand that Brahman is Adhikam, Brahman is greater, Brahman is different. Veda Nirdeshat, because Shruti also talks about Veda or the difference between Brahman and Jiva. So, the Purva Pakshi took the statement of identity for Purva Paksha. Siddhanti takes the statements of Veda for answering. Because if Shruti is your basis, then Shruti says both. That means that you interpret things properly. You are misinterpreting the Abheda. So to interpret the identity properly, you should also take into account the statement that talk about the difference between the two also. So this is identity which seems to put up with difference. It is B is equal to A is not equal to that kind of identity it is. Machthani sarvabhutani nacham teshu avastita nacha machthani bhutani. I am the self of all. They are all superimposed upon me, but I am not in them. They are dependent upon me. I am not dependent upon them. So that is how identity is to be understood that way. Jastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanu pashyati sarvabhuteshi chatmanam. The one who sees all the beings in the self and self in all the beings. That is the knowledge. What is knowledge of identity? That all beings are in me and I am in all the beings. I cannot be in all the beings if I am in ahankara. If I am a jiva or ego, I can't be in all the beings. For me to be in all the beings, my perception of myself must be different. I cannot be in ahankara and expect that I am in everybody. I must be what? I am consciousness. As consciousness, I am in all the beings. And as names and forms, they are all in me. That they are all in me, what? All names and forms are in me, are because of me, are superimposed upon me. I am the self. And as consciousness, I am the self of all. So that's how identity is taught. Not that Shvetaketu, as Shvetaketu is Brahman. When Shvetaketu's perception of himself changes completely, and Shvetaketu realizes that I am consciousness, then he sees the identity with Brahman and not otherwise. As long as Shvetaketu maintains his perception of himself that I am an ahankara, I am an individual being, so long it is not possible for him to see this identity. So identity must be understood with reference to difference also. That is identity in spite of difference. Meaning that at some level there is a difference. At some level there is identity, at some level there is difference. When you say that bangle and earring are the same, they are not same as name and form. There is difference in level of name and form, there is oneness in level of gold, and similarly Jiva and Ishvara are one, not at the level of name and form, not at the level of Upadhi, at the level of the true nature which is consciousness. This is not understood by Purvapakshi. So we will explain this, what identity means, that Bheda Vyapadeshad. Shruti also mentions the Bheda, the difference between Brahma and Jiva also. That means Brahman is different from Jiva at one level, and Brahman is identical to Jiva at another level. That's how the explanation. So anyway, he has based his Purvapaksha based on identity as interpreted by him, and we are replying as the identity maintaining a difference as we understand the identity. That's how tu shabdah paksham vyavardayati. This tu or however refutes the Purvapaksha or the opponent's view. Okay, we'll continue. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeri Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.